Holy moly, what a wild finish in Thunder Valley. I love Bristol. Hey there, race fans, it's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Bristol Motor Speedway, Thunder Valley, the world's fastest half mile, the last great Coliseum of racing. This place brings out the best and the worst in the drivers when they compete on this concrete half mile that produces exciting racing, a lot of drama, and some tempers flaring. We saw a lot of that this past Saturday night at the Bass Pro Shops NRA night race, and the most dominant driver this season comes back out on top to show that he's still the favorite to win the Bill France Cup. Let's talk about all that went down in Thunder Valley. Number 1, Kyle Larson picks up his 6th win of the season. Won Saturday night's Bass Pro Shops NRA night race at Bristol, winning it over Kevin Harvick, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, and Alex Bowman. Kyle Larson has been so close so many times at Bristol Motor Speedway. We were all wondering, when is that dude ever going to win a Cup race here? He's won in Xfinity before, but he never won in Cup when he drove for Ganassi. This time around with a different car driving for Hendrick Motorsports, he put it all together. He led the most laps, he won Stage 2, and he came to this race also with literally no pressure because he already clinched his spot to the round of 12 after having the amount of points that he's had all season and the points he gained in the playoffs. He already clinched last week after the checkers flew at Richmond. So he came to this race just saying, let's go out and let's have some fun. He had fun, all right, by having the best car and leading the most laps. I mean, he was a rocket ship that night. He got stuck back in the traffic at some point, but then he worked his way back to the front. And then some adversity between the two guys in front of him at the very end of the race allowed Larson gave Larson the opportunity to close up and battle for the win. He passed Kevin Harvick with 5 laps to go. He was able to hold him off despite Harvick getting to the bumper and trying to move Larson out of the way. Larson wasn't having any of it and wasn't having it at all, and he was able to hold off Kevin Harvick and win at Bristol Motor Speedway. You know, the 5 teams have been very strong this season. The previous 2 races, however, we've seen the Gibbs guys beginning to get closer to the 5 team. Denny Hamlin held off Larson at Darlington. Martin Truex Jr. was so dominant at Richmond along with Hamlin. Both those guys had really good runs the first 2 races. Now Kyle Larson has decided to, you guys think you've caught up to me? Think again. I'm still the favorite. So Kyle Larson has got everything. He's got everything good going for him right now. He's just got all the momentum, and I believe he's going to carry this forward into the next few races in these next few rounds. I mean, this next round, with the points gap he's got, he shouldn't be worried at all about one of those races in there. Well, actually 2 of them, because they're pretty big wild cards. Number 2, the big storyline, Chase Elliott and Kevin Harvick getting into each other. Both these drivers came in with a considerable gap over the playoff cut line where they were in position to lock themselves in as long as they gained enough stage points, which they did. And with about 100 laps to go, both drivers had already locked in their spots for the round of 12. But they were about to battle it out for the win. Chase Elliott, who early in the race had a very fast race car, but after the stage 1 concluded and everybody pitted, he was caught for speeding. He had to work his way back up to the field. He had definitely had a very fast car, capable of winning the race. And when he took the lead, it looked like he was going to run away with it. But then here comes Kevin Harvick, who hadn't won all year long. And by the way, love the subway paint scheme. That thing's really nice. Guess Jimmy Johnson's done with Kevin Harvick now. They were battling it out for the win at the very end, and with 35 laps to go and trying to pass Josh Bilicki, a lap car, Harvick moved to the inside of the backstretch. Elliott was committed to the middle, and then Harvick slid up into turn number 3 and got into Elliott, cutting down Elliott's left front tire and brought Larson back into the equation. Elliott had to pit late, and he settled for a 25th place finish 3 laps down. Harvick ended up losing after getting passed late by Kyle Larson, but the Elliott-Harvick story did not end on the racetrack. It carried on to the post-race festivities, also known as an almost post-race brawl. Elliott and Harvick were very upset when they climbed out of their cars, literally parked in front, Elliott parked in the exit of pit road off the backstretch. Harvick put his car right behind him. And when they both climbed out, they were both very upset, and they had a heated discussion, and they were basically blaming one another. There was a little bit of shoving, but wasn't intense. The crew members had to come in. You know, there wasn't a lot of shoving and fisticuffs there. I get why both drivers were upset. They were both going for wins at the heat of the moment. I don't really think you can blame one driver for that. It was just racing at Bristol. I mean, Harvick did kind of slide up, but Elliott maybe could have given a little room and, try to settle in line behind Josh Bilicki and say, I can give it another try. But I get why both these guys are frustrated. And Harvick hasn't had a lot of luck this season, doesn't have a lot of bonus points. Elliott hadn't won an oval yet this season, and he came very close Saturday night to doing it. They both had some choice words for each other. Harvick, called Elliott out saying he's a chicken you-know-what. I'm not going to curse on this show, obviously. And he said, I don't care if the fans are booing me, because they were. He said, I'm going to stick up for I don't care what they think. I am who I am. Pretty much almost like a Kyle Busch quote. And he said, I'm about to rip somebody's head off. That's a little too much. Elliott, on the other hand, admitted saying, I don't care who he is. I'm going to stand up for me, myself, and my entire race team. Which Elliott, I think, is pretty much at this point in his career, has finally had enough of getting pushed around by some of these guys. He got pushed around by Denny Hamlin in the 2017 Martinsville race, where he got punted out of the lead late, which cost Elliott the opportunity to get his first ever Cup win. He had to wait until 2018 at Watkins Glen to get the job done. He had an opportunity to win on the oval this Saturday night, and I get why he's frustrated. Sometimes you could give a guy room, but then again, you're racing for the lead. And another thing, it's Bristol, baby. It brings out the best and the worst in the drivers. After the little heat discussion, they met again in the garage area. They seemed to have a little cooler heads this time. They seemed to try to talk it out, but there were some media people there, and Harvick Elliott would tell him, just go, get away. We want to have a civil discussion and not have the media around us. So they went to Elliott's hauler for a discussion. Nobody else followed them in. Harvick exited a couple moments later. Was it settled out in the hauler? I don't know, but they seem to have calmed down after their heated discussion. So I think things with these two going forward will be very interesting, but I think they'll be okay. Plus, in this next round, you can't really retaliate at Las Vegas or Talladega. You can't retaliate there. And the Roval, I mean, it all depends. If Harvick's running top 10 or Elliott's pulling away from everybody because it's a road course. We don't know what's going to happen between these two the rest of the races in the playoffs, but one thing that has done is it's fired both of them up to win. They want to win races. They want to win this championship. That's what the playoffs are all about. It brings out the best and the worst, and it brings up the drama and the intensity to win this championship. Everything's on the line for these guys. So I get why they're both frustrated. They both have the right to be upset. Did they sort it out in Elliott's hauler? Who knows? But at least there weren't any punches thrown. A lot of people would have loved that, but at least these guys are champions and they know how to talk it out at least. 40-plus-year-old driver who's been in the sport since 2001. And NASCAR's most popular driver, the reigning Cup champion, are able to settle it out in the garage and then go to Elliott's hauler. I hope things have settled out between these guys, and hopefully things moving forward will be okay with them, but we shall see. Number 3, the big storyline of the night was who was going to get eliminated, who was going to advance to the next round of the playoffs. Well, the battle for the final 2 spots was tight between teammates Alex Bowman and William Byron and the 10th Eric Almirola. It was just a dogfight. William Byron came into this race almost 20 points below the cutoff. Pretty much meant he needed to win this race. Well, William Byron did a lot better than that and gained some stage points in both stages. And then he got to the top 5 and the very end of the race. He was able to hold on for 3rd. Alex Bowman, I was a little concerned about him coming into this race considering he hadn't had quite the good finishes at Bristol the past few races, the past few times we've been here. But Alex Bowman put together a good effort. Despite running top 15 early on, he and Byron kept working on their cars. They kept moving to the front. And they both put themselves in good positions, and both were able to make it into the next round by 2 points. Both drivers 2 points above the cutoff ahead of Eric Almirola. You can't blame Eric Almirola for not giving everything he had. He had a wild night as well. Beginning of stage 2, there was some smoke trailing from the 10 car, and it felt like that's an oil leak. He's leaking some fluid on the racetrack. And NASCAR, when the caution came out for another incident, NASCAR black flagged the 10 car. He had to come to pit road. And at that point, I felt like when they pulled the hood up, I'm like, yup, he's done. However, it was an oil line that came loose, or there was a hole in it. They were able to fix that and then got him back in the race, and he was moving up to the field. At one point, with different strategies going on the racetrack, he was in the top 10. It looked like, holy moly, is Eric Almirola actually going to make it to the next round, considering that his night was almost done with an oil line belt with a hole in it? It was going to cost him his chance to make it to the next round. They almost pulled it off. Unfortunately, the final stage came and they kept dropping to the field. They were in a tough position with a lot of guys back there, and they just didn't really put it together at the very end. But regardless, I think the 10 teams should keep their heads high. They gave it everything they had. It was one of their best efforts in this entire year, other than them winning that magical victory at New Hampshire and the decent run they had last weekend in Richmond before they had to pit because of the loose wheel that they had to overcome. So that kind of sucks. However, I feel like the 10 teams should hold their heads high because it's been a trying year for this team. You know, they got to push forward. They got to try to gain some good results the next few weeks before they focus for 2022. Eric Almirola is still competitive. It's just sometimes you have down years. Stuart Haas definitely had a down year this year. They almost got their second win as an organization Saturday night with Kevin Harvick, but the 10 teams should at least hold their heads high. They gave it everything they had. Kudos, though, to Alex Bowman and William Byron, because a lot of people probably had them both eliminated after this race because of their previous 2 races, how it didn't go well for them. They were able to overcome all that adversity and all the question marks about whether they were going to make it or not, or only one of those guys could make it, or if both of them were going to be eliminated. They were able to pull off Hail Marys and make it to the next round and join their other 2 teammates. So kudos to Hendrick Motorsports. All 4 cars are in the next round. They're still having a phenomenal season as an organization. Number 4, Old Bristol, New Bristol, combined. We saw a lot of interesting racing this weekend where a lot of drivers in the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series worked the bottom groove, which is what we used to have with the old Bristol. But back then we didn't have PJ1. It was like before we kind of reconfigured the banking. It was a different kind of Bristol back then. We saw a lot of that Thursday night and Friday night, and we saw signs of that as well in the Saturday night race. But you can also tell the Cup guys were able to work the high groove up towards the wall better than the Xfinity and Truck guys did. It provides some exciting racing. I mean, with the PJ1 stuff on the bottom, you can run down there. You know, the previous years that we ran this race on the bottom, it would work for a couple laps, and then guys would go back to the top side. But really all night, the top side and the bottom groove seemed to work both ways for anybody that wanted to run down those grooves. So it made the racing very exciting. There wasn't a lot of cautions and a lot of wrecks. I mean, there were a couple wrecks, but there wasn't a lot of cautions. As far as big wrecks on the racetrack, there was basically, you know, just good side-by-side action, battle for position. Good racing all around at Bristol. And I commend the drivers for putting on quite the show for the last race in the round of 16. I thought it was a lot of fun being there in person. It was just great, and the fans hopefully got their money's worth with this race. And now there's possible talks to think, could Bristol maybe be the Championship 4 race in the near future? We shall see. After the racing we saw Saturday night and all weekend, why not? Why not Bristol as the final race to decide who's going to be your new champion in NASCAR? All 3 series, that would be pretty cool, but it's NASCAR's call, so we'll see what happens going forward. And number 5, the 4 drivers that have been officially eliminated from the round of 16. Michael McDowell, Tyler Reddick, Eric Almirola, and Kurt Busch. To be quite honest, Michael McDowell had an uphill battle after the crash early in the Darlington race and struggling last weekend. He had to battle with no power steering in his car this entire race Saturday night. He had a handful and his arms must have been exhausted after that race. But you can't blame the 34 team for trying. He's had a great season. I mean, you win the Daytona 500, you consider this year a success, especially for this team that's kind of getting used to running the top 20 now. There's a little bit of rumors going on lately about whether or not it's going to be a one-car team next year because 2311 Racing got a new car coming out next year with Kurt Busch driving. They don't have a charter, and there's talks that they may acquire one of the Front Row Motorsports charters. We'll see what happens going forward. But Michael McDowell and the 34 team still had a very solid season. Tyler Reddick also gets some credit for him because beginning of the year they were struggling. Then they started to get some good results by the spring, early summer. This team definitely had everything going well for them, especially the last few races of the regular season where they almost shot themselves in the foot with some bad results at Indianapolis Road Course, Michigan, and Daytona. I felt like that crash was the nail in the coffin for them because Austin Dillon was going to gain a considerable amount of points and beat his teammate out. But he ended up getting a top 5 out of it, I believe, or top 10 at the very least. And he was able to make it into the playoffs. However, the result last week at Darlington Richmond kind of hurt them, and they didn't really do too well. They weren't horrible Saturday night. They just really weren't up there at all, which surprised me because Tyler Reddick's pretty good here. As I mentioned, Eric Almirola, he gave it everything he had. He just couldn't put it together, but nonetheless, a solid effort by the 10 team. The biggest shock for me is Kurt Busch. I mean, coming in I don't think anybody predicted that Kurt Busch would be one of the 4 drivers eliminated. I mean, the Richmond wreck really hurt him last week, crashing out early and just getting 1 point out of it. And he was tied with Alex Bowman coming into this race above the cutoff. When the green flag dropped, the 1 car just struggled so bad. They weren't even in the top 10. They were nowhere close near the top 10. They really had their hands full with that 1 car. According to reports, they eventually fixed the handling on the car. At the very end, they were beginning to try to work their way back to the front. However, it was too little too late for the 1 car and Kurt Busch. So it sucks that he's not able to get Chip Ganassi his only Cup championship, as we all know that they are folding operations after the end of the season and are giving their assets to Trackhouse Racing. We do know that Kurt Busch will be in a car next year with 2311, so we'll see what happens. But, you know, it kind of sucks. Kind of like 2019 season for Kurt Busch. Good regular season, then the playoffs, not a lot of luck. But I believe next year Kurt Busch and the new team will make the playoffs, get a win. They'll be championship contenders. So, nonetheless, a good season for the one team. Just, it is what it is. So, the 12 drivers that are officially moving on to the round of 12, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, William Byron, Joey Logano, Brad Keselowski, Christopher Bell, and Kevin Harvick. Any one of these guys still has a chance to win this championship. This next round upcoming is going to be difficult because we've got Las Vegas, we've got Talladega, one of the big wild cards, and another wild card in the Charlotte Roval. So this next round is going to be very, very interesting to see who is still the best car, other than Kyle Larson or Truex or Hamlin right now. Who can keep up with these guys? I'm very interested to see which drivers make it out of this round and which drivers are going to unfortunately be left thinking what could have been. I'm looking forward to this next round, and I can't wait to see what happens. Also want to let you guys know that I was at the race again this weekend. It was a fun time being there Saturday. I got a lot of content. I'm going to be doing a lot of editing this week. It probably won't be out until maybe the weekend. It's a lot of editing that I got to work on. I also did some stuff for my demo reel. But I'm very, very excited to bring you guys all the content and the shots I was able to provide for you at Bristol Motor Speedway this weekend. I had a blast. It was so much fun to go back to the racetrack, and I'll get to do it again in a couple of weeks at the Charlotte Roval, and I can't wait to be there for another elimination race and see what happens. So, hope you all enjoyed the Bristol Motor Speedway action this weekend. So much drama, so much excitement, a lot of storylines, great racing all around. I just love Bristol Motor Speedway, and I know a lot of you enjoy it as well. And great racing all weekend. Can't wait to see what happens in the upcoming round of 12. So subscribe, like, congratulations to Kyle Larson, and congratulations also to the other 11 drivers with Larson that made it into the round of 12. We'll see where they go from here as the battle for a championship continues on. See you guys.